So, welcome back to another Vitals Live tonight. This is one of the startup spotlights. So this is free for anybody. So we may see some different faces in here that we're not used to. This is going to be the first time that we've got a split screen like this, where we've got multiple people in different locations. So that's going to be fun. So basically, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, there is a question and answer at the bottom, and we can bring you up. And otherwise, you can use the chat bar. You can say hi to the guys. You can say, "Where'd you shoot all those deer? What's going on? The, your hat. What is going on here, there, everywhere?" But basically, what we're doing here tonight is we're here to talk about fletching arrows or the lack thereof. So. We have Zinger Fletching, we have Brian Terry, Steve Terry, and we have a squinty Brandon. I don't know his last name off the top of my head.
My glasses.
So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. The floor is yours.
All right, guys. My name is Brian Terry, and I'm one of 3 owners of Zinger Fletches. We'll introduce Steve. You can go ahead.
Steve Terry, Brian's brother. From Southwest Michigan. Started hunting, I guess, when I was probably 10. Fell in love ever since. Been doing it. Not very good at it, but try every time. So what else can you say, right? Go ahead, Brandon.
Brandon Cummings, longtime friend of Brian and Steve. Kind of the same story. Been hunting since we were kids and just kind of wanted to get into the hunting industry and see where we could go with it.
And one thing to mention about the 3 of us, kind of the 3 stooges, but we're just your everyday guy. My profession is I'm a high school teacher. Steve's a liquor salesman, and then we got Brandon, who's a HVAC technician. So kind of well-rounded group here regarding our backgrounds and what we do on an everyday basis. And it's kind of funny how Zingers came about. I teach engineering at a local high school, and I had some students working on some projects, kind of like a passion project. And these guys were having a problem. They just couldn't come up with an idea. And I've always been kind of a tinker and whatnot. And we have access to 3D printers. And basically, I kind of planted the seed. I said, hey, why don't you guys try this? Because I knew they were both hunters, both bow hunters. And I said, why don't you guys come up with, some sort of new fletch? All right. Look at what's out there on the market, gather your data, and come up with something unique, something different. And they did their research. They ended up having a good product. But it was a product that was very similar to some products that exist out there. And their product, we obviously printed with some PLA, which is the most common form of 3D filament. And it's like a hard plastic. It's not very flexible, kind of fragile. But they were able to test. They were able to conduct the research, collect data, and they had a fletch that worked. Well, anyway, later on in the year, the kids are always, they're obsessed with printing things, and I kind of push it because I love the creative nature and what the kids bring to the table. And they're like, Mr. Terry, have you ever heard of this flexible filament? And I was like, well, I've heard about it, but I haven't looked into it. And they said, well, check this out. Just go look at it. So we did some research. They pulled up a link, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, that's interesting. So it's flexible. All right. I wonder if our printers can do this. So ended up ordering some on a whim, just because they wanted to mess around and print different types of bracelets and things like that they were designing. And we got this TPU, which is thermoplastic polyurethane, and I'm looking at it, and literally as I opened the package and I felt this material, the light bulb went off, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we can make something that is, if it stays this flexible, if it stays this rigid at the same time, and it has this memory, I'm like, we could do something with this. So I got with the guys that did the passion project on their fletch. We printed out their design, And at the conclusion of the print, we picked it up and we started messing with it. We're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome stuff. We squeezed it, came back to form. And I said, we got something cool here, guys. So let's run with it. Anyway, they graduated, they went on, and I kept playing because I'm a tinkerer, and I'm like, we have got to do something with this. There is a huge potential here with this. And basically what we came up with was a compression fit design that you can just literally slip on an arrow within 3 seconds and you have your fletch done. It took some toying around to get the dimensions right regarding the compression fit onto each individual arrow shaft. But as the next year went on, I kept tinkering, we kept playing, and we did some testing. I showed Steve and Brandon, and they're like, oh, this is really cool. So I printed them some. They shot them up and they tested them, and they're like, this is really neat. I think we have something here. And I'm like, yeah, but we can print these up and we don't ever have to fletch again. And we got to talk and we're like, do you think anybody else would be interested in these? And I was like, I don't know. Let's see what happens. So ended up posting some things. I think the first couple posts were on like Saddle Hunter. We're big saddle hunters, the three of us. And some guys were like, oh, I want to try. One of the guys being, I'll name drop him. That's okay. He's a tethered guy, Jared Schaefer. He's like, dude, I want to try some of these. So we got some in his hands. And all I was looking for was feedback because I felt we were kind of biased just because we were kind of the originators of this. So I wanted to get it in some other people's hands. So we sent some away. So the guys gave us feedback and they were like, dude, get us more. We want more of these. So we were like, I think we have something. So we started, we created this kind of podunk website off of Weebly, and that's how we got our start. And just to see if anybody was interested, well, we started getting a sale here, a sale there, and we're like, all right, guys, we got to do something with this. So we kind of came together, we created a plan, we formed our LLC. We're all 3 partners. Brandon and I primarily do the printing, and Steve is our HR department, and he's getting good reviews right now. He's doing really well. You got to keep the customer happy. But that, in a nutshell, that's kind of how we started it. And it was just one of those things where it just came together kind of by accident and just kind of following a passion and an interest. And I mean, we're here today, and I mean, we're staying busy, that's for sure.
Okay, so real quick, what level of, I don't know, arrow tuning, how far did you guys go prior to this? Like I told in passing earlier, prior to launching this, and when we talked, that I do not have that. It is not cathartic for me to build arrows one vein at a time. It is not a process in which I enjoy. It is a very stressful, frustrating endeavor, and it has been since I was 13 years old and I tried it the first time. Now there are other guys that fully enjoy that process. I mean, fast forward, think to the trad guy that crests his own arrows, and does the painting, and they take pride in all of that. So where were you guys at prior to stealing this idea from your student?
I'm gonna be honest. I tinker a ton, and I'm nerdy. I'm as nerdy as it gets because I'm all about maximum efficiency and why have something when you're not going to use it, kind of thing. And if I'm going to include something, it's going to add a benefit. It's funny you say that because I just got done building a set of some day 6 arrows that are they're just flying like darts right now. And I'm really big on the FOC, heavy arrow kind of thing. And it basically, I mean, the ranch fair, I enjoy watching his videos. Him and I are on alignment in terms of what we believe, the physics aspects of things. Because if you can get an arrow kind of pulling itself as opposed to, pushing, and I mean, really in terms of fletching, you don't need much, just because that arrow's pulling itself. But I'm the nerd probably in the group when it comes to doing arrows. I've done arrows for both Brandon and Steve. And I get nerded out and geeked out when I call them up, or I'll send them a text message. Hey, you guys got to check these shafts out. We could do this at this, this length with these inserts, and it's going to give you this much FOC. Your feet per second are probably going to be this, your kinetic energy, momentum. It's just something that I've always been interested in.
I think it was about 6 o'clock in the morning 2 weeks ago when we got our new set of arrows. Brian texted me, "Your arrows are in your shed." You know, I'm just waking up, and he's already out delivering arrows because he had to build them the night before.
I just love it.
And so where do these fletchings fall in for that guy, right? So the guy that likes to build arrows, the guy that likes to tinker, the guy that likes to, that enjoys that process, that maybe perhaps whether it's similar products or your Zingers there that say it's just a gimmick. My father-in-law used to work in a bow shop, for 30 years, and they used to fletch, dozens upon dozens of arrows a day. And when I showed him to him, he said, "That'll never steer it might work for a field point. It might work for, the flies like field point rage broadhead, a mechanical, but you put a big broadhead on there, there's no way that it's going to steer." How do these fall in for that guy with that mindset?
Yeah, I feel like I'm hogging the screen, but I'm gonna give you an analogy. It's like, what's your dream car? All right. Do you want something? This is my opinion. Do you want something that's going to be, fancy and sleek looking, that can get you from point A to B, probably pretty fast and look really shiny? Or are you more of a kind of pickup guy getting the job done? Me personally, I want to get the job done. I want to get the job done as easy and as efficiently as possible. But with the guy, I used to be that guy that would fletch my arrows and kind of make them look as fancy as I could. So I understand the artistic aspect and kind of like owning your set, and like I did that, and it's a personal touch thing. I can see that being a drawback because with Zingers, they're a solid color at this point. So, I mean, you can dress it up with some wraps, but really this is kind of more of it's a working machine. And that's kind of my opinion.
Kind of a pragmatic approach, utilitarian. It does its job, and that's it. So it's a joke between the three of you and me, just because I like to have fun. But what are the difference between the Zingers and some of the fob products that are out there? It's a very much not a fob. It's very clear if you ask these three gentlemen about fobs. It is not a fob.
Yeah, you said the three-letter word. Basically, the fob, you got it's held on by the knock on the back of the arrow. This slides over the shaft of the arrow wherever you want to place it due to compression. The fob is an airfoil, whereas Zingers currently I have 3 or 4 fins. The fob has several different sizes that fit a variety of arrow shafts, and these are specifically made to fit your individual arrow shaft. The material's different. Fobs tend to be, I think they're made out of a nylon. So it is rigid yet flexible. It's more on the rigid side. They're very heavy duty in terms of they're pretty durable, unless you start stacking them, and then they can start to chip. Zingers are a little more pliable, more flexible. They both are designed with the idea to pop off on a pass through. Unless you want to glue your Zinger, then it will act as a traditional glued on fletch. Personally, I like the idea of it popping off and kind of marking the spot where you hit in that moment of adrenaline rush, especially if you're in an area that you're walking in and you're hunting a unique area that you really haven't been before, and you set up on some hot sign. Being in an unfamiliar area, it's nice to have that marking the location. But I mean, there are some similarities. They're unique. They're both smaller than your typical fletching option. But there's obviously a lot of inherent differences as well.
Okay. And so Jason has a question saying, issues with fitment. So you kind of touched on it a little bit in the differences between the the 3-letter word and and the Zingers there. But he's saying, is there any issues with fitment with tapered shaft like a grizzly stick?
No, as far as the grizzly sticks, we've had umpteen grizzly stick purchasers. We go basically just off the outside diameter of your arrow. So at that point, towards the end of the shaft is the OD that we're looking for, which works its way back. But yeah, as far as that, no, we haven't had any issues with tapered.
Okay. And so another question coming in from Ed, he says, these are, I believe I said, for a regular guy that doesn't want to go through all the hassle of fletching arrows and all that stuff. But he's saying, and this is probably towards the customer service HR department again, Steve, he doesn't have a micrometer and he's got some old Carbon Express arrows. So how do you direct, since these are arrow shaft specific and markedly so, that's what makes them, what they are to some degree. What do you say to the guy that doesn't own a set of micrometers and he's got some arrows that he would like to, try some of these on?
There have been some instances where that has happened. I guess the biggest thing is possibly, is there a bow shop in your area to where you could take it and have them mic it, have somebody else mic it? But yeah, we've been able to find a lot of the ODs that, a lot of people haven't, whether it's us reaching out to the companies themselves, messaging them, emailing them, calling them, trying to find specific ODs that are just not online, downloading files. Yeah, it's some of the arrows are definitely hard to find, and without a mic, it's a struggle sometimes.
Well, you guys would be amazed, listeners would be amazed, and if you think about it, there are, we lost count how many different varieties of outside diameters there are. We have folders upon folders of files that designate certain ODs with certain, brands and whatnot. But getting into this, I was like, just getting into it, we're like, we can handle this. But we have folders upon folders that we just have to keep track with this stuff. And if they don't have a dial caliper, then like Steve said, check in with your bow shop. And if we can't find it online, which is a beautiful thing, because I think we found all but maybe a handful. And the handful that we didn't find, a lot of them were bought overseas to where the manuals don't really exist over in the U.S., so on and so forth.
Yeah, okay. The biggest issue we find is a lot of people in the hunting industry, everybody goes by the inside diameter. So, we'll get that a lot. People provide inside diameters because they're used to it. That's everything, Knox, inserts. Everybody cares about inside. Nobody really cares about OD. But as far as our fletch goes, we need that OD so they fit on compression and fit properly.
Okay, and just so you brought that up, Brandon, whoever can address it, what you talked a little bit about what makes these different, but let's talk about that compression fit. How does that work, and why does it work?
So I'll take it. The TPU material, thermoplastic polyurethane, is it's a very flexible material. While at the same time it holds its memory well. So I'll pick one up here, and I have one in my hands here, and you can fold it up. So you can see in my hand, fold it up, and upon release, it basically holds. It returns back to its normal shape. And once we printed our first couple out, we played with it. I'm like, oh my gosh! Guys that are backpacking, even if you don't have Zingers on your arrows currently, if you're fletched arrows, you get the half dozen you take or whatever, if something happens to the feathers, maybe they get damaged, and if you have a couple spare Zingers, you kind of save the trip, and potentially that could be a lot of money saving. You could make a detrimental situation into a positive one by slipping something like this on.
Yeah, you could make or break a trip for $16. you know, 6-pack of Zingers, throw in your pack, whether you're going to use them or not, just to have them, just to know that they're there in case something does happen. I mean, that's just a peace of mind thing for me, just knowing that they're there.
Okay, and Dave has a question just saying, asking if you have options for micro diameter arrows. I guess maybe a better way to phrase that, is there any arrows that you can't create these for if you had the outside diameter?
No, the answer is no. We can create anything as long as we have the OD.
Okay. I'm going to find the biggest.
You're going to have one big zinger.
So,
There's a lot of target guys that do end up getting some zingers. And
Yeah.
you know, when we got our first couple orders, we were like, holy smokes, because we're not target archers. We're just, you know, we kill
Usually
stuff.
hogs.
And yeah. But we've gotten really good feedback from those guys.
okay, and I guess that kind of leads into another question. Let's talk about that target archery side of it. Right now, I guess real quick, how long have you been doing this?
Not long.
What is it? You're looking at about, since the first Zinger was printed, 8 months.
Okay.
9 months. It was right in the first part of December.
Okay. And that's not an indictment on the company or you guys or anything like that. I just want to kind of give a little background for some of the questions that I have here, because, you know, normally we would see, you know, big advertising, or we would see, you know, YouTube video upon YouTube video, and there are some really good ones out there that'll lead into some of these questions here. But from the target archery side, are these guys indoor, which would have been kind of more in that timeline, field archery, or I guess what are we talking about at distance? So or do you have guys that are shooting these out 80 yards, 100 yards, and how are they affecting accuracy, or what have you seen to this point?
So as far as the distance shooting, we've done our testing. We all shoot the EZV sight. So really, it's your basic hunting sight. So we're not really out there sniping from 100 yards. We basically stick right around, we will shoot at 60, 65, 70. We have shot 70, 80. But with that sight, we're not that accurate anyways with that sight from that distance. But we do have a couple gentlemen that have sent us videos. We just got one from a guy down in Indiana that 100 yards, and he had a group like this from 100 yards, and he said, sold. I'm firm believer. And then 3 days later, he just shot a buck. So in Tennessee. Yeah, we have not heard any bad feedback at all about distance being an issue.
Well, and for those of you guys that are fans of Tethered and their video series coming out, I think here in another couple of days or so, you might see an animal being taken at quite a decent distance with the Zinger.
Yeah, like I said, it's all, you know, everything with archery is going to be somewhat anecdotal, because Levi Morgan is going to be able to pick up my bow and probably shoot it better than I can, no matter the tune that's on it, or whether he's shooting a bear shaft or a Zinger or, you know, anything. So, you know, how far that you guys can shoot is only up to your ability. That's why I was kind of asking, like, what kind of feedback are you getting? And, you know, maybe you guys are crack shots and that's what you do all the time, but it doesn't sound like that. So just curious as to where, you know, what the feedback is. So I think that's great. Jason wants to know if you could explain the offset options that you have.
So
Go ahead.
we offer a 1 degree, a 3 degree, and a 6 degree straight offset. So this is just a straight offset. It's not a true helical. but we offer that 1, 3, and 6 degree and the 3 and 4 fin option.
Okay. And so what is the recommendation for those arrows? And then Ed is asking, so at 100 yards, what was the offset that guy was shooting?
What did we send him? I think the 6.
See,
I think he had the Z46.
Okay.
So 6 degree offset.
And that's going to be your best bet for a big fixed blade. So some guys that we've got feedback from shooting like turkey choppers, 2-inch fixed blades, shoot the Z46 and they steer those just fine. So that's kind of the best go around option for everything.
And kind of what you said earlier, Adam, about Levi Morgan, it really comes down to the tune of the bow and the consistency of the archer. So traditionally what we'll say is, all right, what's your broadhead? And if it's a larger fix, we're always going to recommend the Z46 or possibly the Z43 or Z36, depending on their preference, just to get that, so that we're kind of safe. And their ability isn't, because we don't know their ability. However, if you got an archer that has a very tuned bow and has very consistent form, they would have no issue shooting a 1 degree Zinger or 1 degree any kind of fletching. The higher offset really, it's more forgiving. So if you're worried about torquing while you're hunting, err on the safe side and get a higher offset. But there's a drawback from that. The more your arrow spinning with that, with a big fixed, physics tells you that as it's penetrating an animal, that high spin rate is actually going to slow penetration, with the exception of some of the single beveled broadhead. That's something for the guys that are shooting fixed heads to kind of think about. Me personally, I'm shooting a 3 degree, and I shoot the small fixed heads. I shoot the tooth of the arrow. Fixed heads, they fly like darts, and I mean, they are tough as nails. So it really comes down to the archer's consistency and the tune of their bow.
Okay, so if you were to recommend, like, a regular guy just wants to try the Zingers, where do you point them?
The test pack. I mean, if you don't know, and you just don't know which direction to go, which one you're going to be more apt to sling, I always steer towards the test pack. That way they can make their own decision, and then maybe they try the test pack and then they reach back out and say, hey, this did this or this did that. Now what do you recommend? And we can go from there.
And what comes in a test pack?
So you get a 1 degree, a 3 degree, and a 6 degree in both Z3 and Z4.
Okay. And so one thing that I know we've got Tim Clark on here watching, I know that he's got and has had this, not necessarily, it's not an issue with the Zingers, it's just a kind of anomaly that we don't really think about. But you guys offer right offset and left offset. And how would you know that? What would you know? That's why I wanted to know what came in the test pack, because maybe I'm like Ed and I'm a regular guy and I don't know whether my arrow comes off spinning left or right, and I ordered the wrong one.
The thing that individual, if they have no idea, what we would advise them to do is get 2 test packs, one in a left offset, one in a right offset, if they want to go that route. Another easy way, so you can save some money, and I'm kind of hurting business here, but another way to do that is to bare shaft test. So strip your arrow and literally take 5 steps from your target and bare shaft, and make sure that you orient your arrow in such a way to where you can see the natural spin of your bare shaft. And a lot of guys, they're so used to, we're just going to shoot right offset. And that was kind of my mentality years ago. And I just recently picked up a new bow. My previous bow, it basically gave a nice right spin. All right. And that was the natural spin coming off with my bare shafts. Well, my new bow, I thought it was going to be the same thing. But I was like, oh, let's just see. So I tested and I bare shafted, and it was definitely rotating to the left. So now I know that I'm a left offset for that specific setup that I have. So it can change. It really doesn't depend on the archer, unless you're a finger shooter. But it kind of depends on the bow itself.
Okay, and on that note, Ed's also asking recommendation as far as an offset, not for the big fixed blades, but for a small expandable. As far as which offset would be, out of the box best for that type of setup.
Realistically, you could go with like a 1 degree or a 3 in the Z3. I mean, you would a 3 fin or 1 or a 3 degree would be just fine. I've shot the 1 degree with my G5 Havocs in a left offset because I spin naturally left also. And I've shot that expandable out to 50 yards and it flies just fine with a 1 degree in a 3 fin design. So again, kind of what Brian touched on earlier, it also depends on form, consistency, tuning. But yeah, with an expandable, they're going to fly really like a field point. So you don't need much offset.
Okay. Greg wants to know, it seems like, well, I guess, what are the weight of the Zingers? And because he's asking, it seems like they would be most beneficial to a high FOC setup. So if you were shooting a regular, not high front of center, not a heavy arrow setup, how do they work for a traditional Twizzler arrow if you were the Rangeberry?
Well, again, it comes down to, the tune of the bow. It comes down to the form of the archer. And obviously a higher FOC setup is probably going to be a little bit more forgiving, because what we talked about earlier, that arrow's kind of being pulled with the heavy weight up front. But I mean, in terms of feedback, we do have some guys that are shooting some, rather light, arrows in terms of their, spine and grains per inch, and the repeat customers. So it must be working for them.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I know we talked about it at the Tethered Teach and Train, and we were talking about the surface area and kind of what it takes to steer an arrow. So on a heavy arrow, we've already established that the heavy front of center is pulling the arrow, and the better your tune. I mean, if you've got your bare shaft flying fine, it's not going to take a lot to steer it. On those lighter arrows where it's not being pulled and the tune is maybe more important, as the arrows has the ability to flex and all of that. That surface area, I mean, would you recommend maybe a 4 fletch for a guy that has a lighter arrow? Or, I mean, what's the difference between 3 and 4 and maybe a little bit of the physics of actually steering an arrow?
Yeah, if they have a lower FOC type arrow, whether it's light or heavy, but if it's lower FOC, we would definitely recommend leaning towards the 4 fin with a high degree offset. Because when you think about it, as the arrow's launched, it's going to start spinning once it's released from that string. And as you spin that object through the air, the force that it's creating, it's going to want to maintain that path. So the faster we can get it stabilized right off of the release of the string, the more steering capability the Zinger has. The other benefit of being able to place your Zinger on your arrow, the farther back you place it, arrows are kind of like levers. So we're applying the force at the end of the levers. We're gaining that mechanical advantage. So the farther back you have it, the more steering ability that you give your total setup. So that's something to keep in mind for you guys playing around out there.
Well, that's a great kind of segue into where do you put these things? Because you can, I mean, I've messed around with them. You could push it down wherever you want to. And I feel like I've put it where I would think a normal arrow should be fletched, or where you should start it, or somewhere in the middle. And I noticed that I'm getting the it's touching my lips and or in my cheek, and I've gotta move it a little bit. I've got to tweak it. So where would how do you recommend setting these up?
Basically about an inch, inch and a quarter down from the throat of the knock, and then kind of work it from there. So if you're getting face contact, obviously, you might want to just bump it forward a little bit, which is a nice part. You have the ability just to move it, index and arrow, twist it on the shaft. But yeah, we usually start about an inch, inch and a quarter down from the throat of the knock. I mean, if you can get it further back, great. If it doesn't hit your face, far back as you can.
Yeah, one comment on that is you do not want it to make contact with your face. And there are some products out there that we talked about a little earlier that it causes you to change your anchor point. And any difference that, if you're anchoring on the corner of your mouth or on the side of your chin or whatever with a device that is too far back, the inconsistency there is it's gonna throw off the flight of the arrow. So the last thing you want to do is have fletching contact to your face or face mask, because your accuracy is definitely gonna be felt there.
Mm-hmm. And so, do you have any testing, or do you have any feedback, or is anybody using these on crossbows?
The crossbow, we just haven't done enough testing. We haven't done enough testing with the crossbow section of it. Some do, some don't, and it's hard to say yes, we can do it for crossbows when it all depends on the rails of the crossbow, and there's so many different, and they all have different setups based on where that arrow or bolt rests in that rail. Sometimes it flies true, sometimes it skips off. So
and I will comment on that as well. The individuals where they get them working, and it works flawlessly for them, they want more and more and more, because a lot of times with your crossbow shooters, I mean, it's almost like shooting a gun. I mean, your precision is just so tight that they're damaging the typical fletches. And when you go to take a crossbow bolt to get it refletched, you're paying probably $3 to refletch that arrow, whereas you can slip on a $2 Zinger. But like Steve said, the drawback is it depends on the brand of the crossbow that you're shooting, and how it accepts that sleeve, the compression sleeve of the Zinger. And the crossbows, I mean, it's flawless. We got some guys that are very happy that have done some testing for us, and then we have others that the mechanism to fire isn't even it isn't engaged.
Okay. So one thing that comes to my mind that we haven't really talked about, it sounds like we're talking kind of more in the hunting realm than we are in the target archery realm. But for the ease of use for that regular guy hunter that shoots a whisker biscuit, what about that guy? How do these work? Having to go through something like that. And then on the target archery side, when you've got a guy that shoots like a lizard tongue, where it's riding over something like that, and there's obviously going to be a lip from these Zingers being compression fit on there. I guess, are there rests that work or don't work, or are recommended or aren't?
Yeah, we would not recommend a flipper style rest to where that sleeve could come in contact. Depending on if you're shooting fingers, you could have your archer's paradox. It could, your shaft could bend around. There could be no contact, but it's not safe to say it works. For some, it does. And regarding whisker biscuits, Average Jack did a great review on it, and he tested one out. He did find that the 3-fletch or 3-fin design was much more beneficial with the way that a whisker biscuit's designed. And we have guys that contact us that use whisker biscuits, and they're wondering if, hey, can we do this? And we'll say yes, and we get it to them, and they're like, oh yeah, that works just fine. But we would definitely recommend a 3-fletch design, and either in a 1-degree or 3-degree offset. The trouble comes when you got a guy shooting an iron will through a whisker biscuit. and you don't know his or her form, and the tune of their bow. So ideally we would say, well, we want you to shoot a 6 degree, but through a whisker biscuit, it's not as recommended as a 1 degree, 3 degree.
Okay. Greg wants to know, this is one of my favorite questions on our podcast, but it's very relevant to this question here today. Everything that we're doing. What are your guys' arrow setups? What bows? What rests for the three of you?
All right. So I am shooting a Athens Ridge 32. I use the Pro V. I gotta check it out. Make sure I'm saying it. So I have the limb driver Pro V for the rest, and which is limb driven. Easy V sight, and my arrow setup is the Easton Axis 300s, shooting 125 on the end.
Which Zingers? I feel like that's relevant to the.
I guess I could mention. I shoot the Z4 6 degree.
Okay.
So I shoot the exact same bow, Ridge 32, limb driver rest, Pro V, Easy V sight, Easton Axis 340s, Ethics 50 grain up front, 100 grain tooth of the arrow. With the nose button, I don't use a peep with the Easy V. I do like the clear vision of that sight.
Yep.
Is the
I'll follow.
Zingers.
Oh, sorry. Zingers are Z3 6 degree. I shoot the Z3 6 degrees.
All right. So I also shoot the Athens Ridge 32. I actually just picked that one up. I had a 34. I kind of gave it to my brother. Great shooting bow, but the 32. The 32 is it's just a killer. Yeah, it's a good axle to axle. It's not too long, not too short. Really good speed. But arrow setup using a day 6 300 spine, 100 grain collar and insert combo, 125 tooth of the arrow, and then Z43 for the Zinger, Gen 7 vapor trill, limb driver. Easy V sight. You just can't go wrong with those things, especially if your focus is to kill white-tailed deer. But those Athens, man, some of the most underrated bows, and we got to give them some love here.
And they just got purchased by someone else, right? So who's making their bows now, or who are they in conjunction with?
I don't know if a big company bought it. I mean, they're out of New York now. They were out of just in Indiana, but now they're based out of New York. I don't know what actual if it was a big company that bought them, but.
Yeah, because there was they were going out of business or something like that, and then they were acquired by a group that has another set of bows. And I know the same thing happened with Obsession, and I don't know if it's the same group. So Tim had a question. He's still on here, so I'm going to see. I didn't get a opportunity. I'm going to try and bring him on here and see if he can ask his question here. Tim, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Hi, Tim.
How's it going?
Good.
Well, I'm appreciating these, actually both sets of these Zingers that I've picked up from you guys so far. But one thing that I found out when doing the bear shaft test to see the rotation of my arrows, I'm getting, I think, pretty severe left turn on my arrows. So actually at like a foot, I'm getting almost 90 degrees to the left.
Wow.
So then, yeah, so they're really twisting. I actually was shooting at like 3 yards, just a little bit over 3 yards. And my index mark was actually showing like it had turned clockwise, like a quarter of a turn. So I thought, oh, cool, I'm going right. Well, I stepped forward just to verify it, and it was actually to the left farther. So I walked that all the way right up to up to the target. So then that leads to the question of, should I put a less severe, I guess, offset on for my fletching? If I'm just shooting like a fixed blade, I'm shooting it's a Magnus Black Hornet, so it's a double bevel. It's not a single bevel, so it's not going to be inducing twist as it goes through the deer or through the target. But should I put, like, I've got the 6th degree, the 4 fletch 6 on there now, and it seems like it is really twisting. I mean, I can watch it go through the air. It's like a corkscrew. You guys have any experience with that? Does it seem like that's too severe?
What do you think, Steve?
I wouldn't. It really depends. Like, so you're thinking it's just twisting too much?
Yeah, my question is, I'm wondering if that would slow or take too much energy out, as it's passing through a deer. If it's trying to hit the brakes from turning so fast, is that going to be detrimental?
Yeah, if you can get the least amount of offset that you can accurately shoot and fire your broadhead, that's the offset you should probably choose. So with you naturally spinning quick with just a bear shaft, I mean, we're looking, and you're shooting the Black Hornet, and they're known to actually fly really well for it as a fixed head. I mean, I don't think you'd have a problem at all going down to a 3 degree offset.
Awesome. So you'll be seeing another order come in.
All right.
Well played.
Thanks, Tim. Hey, by the way, fantastic job at that saddle demonstration.
Hey,
very, very smooth, and we could tell you knew what you were doing.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Nice
enjoy
job.
doing that stuff. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You bet.
All right. So, I mean, kind of to close this out, as we're coming up on, 50 minutes, like to keep these things around an hour or so. What can we expect from, you guys from Zinger in the future, as far as, we've already established this is, we're 8 months in from, holy cow, this could work, to, where you're at right now. 3D printers, I'm surprised we don't hear them in the background just ripping. But that brings me to one question that I was thinking about personally, is in the nature of 3D printed things. You're going to have, some lines. When we look at the Zingers, they have like perpendicular lines to the arrows. And when we look at like the Max Stealth vanes, they run parallel to the arrow. What are we talking about in noise differential? Have you guys done any testing or anything to see any sort of sound? Because in a hunting scenario, that's kind of what we're always talking about is, you want to make sure that the bow goes off quiet, that the deer isn't jumping the string, all of these things. And so it just seems like, well, if it had to be the Zingers, I would have got them last year, but these lines here.
Well, the noise that if you're hearing some noise, it's probably not due to the lines of the Zinger. What it's probably due to is the flat nature of the fletch in the back. And as a fluid, like air flows past the fins, there's some turbulence created, especially with the faster spinning, the more offset. So a 6 degree is inevitably going to make more noise than a 3 degree or 1 degree. And talking about those lines, if you think about the fastest predators and or prey fish in the ocean, they have scales that are designed in such a way to where the fluid move over the scales, and the lines in the flesh is very similar to that, to which it decreases the amount of time that the fluid has to take, or the drag on the actual surface area itself. So the lines actually would increase the efficiency, but the back side of the Zinger, the way it's designed right now, does tend to create some turbulent air, and that's that noise that you hear with a larger offset.
Okay. And like I said, it was just something that I was curious about, I didn't necessarily notice it in any of the shooting that I did, but it was one of the questions that has been posed to me. Ed is also asking, like, so do you know on pre-manufactured arrows, if you go order them from a big box store or something like that, do they come with a standard offset, or are they usually just straight fletched? And why?
I think most of them are 2-degree right offset. And traditionally speaking, I think the 2-degree right offset, the reason it's right offset is if you think about all the points you screw into the tip of your arrow, you're spinning in that rotation manner. If you go and spin to the left, it's kind of unscrewing it. So those of us that have kind of a left offset, as you're shooting through your targets, you'll kind of know that your tips might be a little loose. But yeah, traditionally when you purchase a box of fletched arrows, let's say from Bass Pro, Cabela, some big box store, they're traditionally going to be 2-degree offset, right degree.
Okay. Yeah, and so kind of back where I was at, kind of wrapping this up a little bit, what can we expect, as we progress here, as Zinger continues to take over the archery community?
Hey, this is just fun stuff.
That would be what we're hoping for.
No, honestly, to be honest, we felt it was just we follow the KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid. And I mean, it's really no more simple than sliding your fletches on. There's no mess, there's no glue, literally no time. You're not having to pay somebody else to do it. And in fact, if you take a dozen arrows to get fletched, it's probably going to cost you more than it does to buy your Zingers. If you're a guy that fletches yourself and you have all the equipment and you have all the time, well, then you're probably better off doing it yourself, especially if you like your fancier looking setups. But I will say this, and Steve, Brandon, don't kill me for saying this. We do have some things in the works regarding some new designs, and we're shooting some today. and the results are, I truly believe Zinger Nation will be very fond of these.
Okay. As we get into, so we've seen, and we've referenced tethered here a couple times, but I think that they're probably the poster children for growing pains as you get into the season. So what are we looking at for shipping times, orders, all of that stuff, as people are saying, okay, well, in Michigan here, October 1st is opening day, so I'm going to get a hold of you guys September 25th. I need these. I don't have to touch them. I just slide them on. It's going to be super easy. What are we talking at realistically for turnaround times?
I mean, that's basically going to be based on you guys, the consumer. It depends on how many we get at one given time. We've got a lot of printers going at any time. There's no day that basically these guys aren't printing, and basically into the night, middle of the night, they're printing, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, they're printing. So they're out there doing their best to get these out as soon as possible. So when I tell these guys, when I get messages saying, hey, when are I ordered last night, when are my Zingers going to come? If it's not the next day, it's 2 days, and it is in the mail in USPS's possession, shipping, which, they've been a little bit slow lately, but on average, you're getting them within 5 days usually from order.
And so is each order one-off? I mean, are you doing this specifically for each order that comes in?
Yes. So we don't carry any stock. So as your order comes in, it is then put in the file to get printed. They are printed based on the order received. So just work on down the line and try to catch up as fast as we can.
Yeah, I want to put in a plug-in for some dealers too. Recently, we've been picking up some dealers, archery shops that have seen the product. They've had guys come in with them on their arrows, and they've taken a liking to them. because if you think about it, they're not having to spend the man hours to fletch arrows. They can throw one on when a guy or gal's coming in to test shoot a bow. They throw it on the closest shaft they have. If it gets damaged, they just pop one off, put on a new one. So at first we didn't know how it was going to look, but with the dealers we have now, it's a beautiful thing. They give us their order, and literally, I mean, knock on wood, it's within 2 days, the Zingers are on their way to the pro shop or, wherever they're located.
Okay. So do you have, like on your website, is there going to be a list of those or something like that? So let's say you guys were in a hunting trip in Wisconsin, and I wanted to put in an order, and it wasn't going to be filled or whatever until I got back. Could I call up Joe's Pro Shop in Minnesota, and maybe he's got some and he can just ship them to me? Or maybe I'm in Minnesota and I can just go there and pick them up.
Yeah, so we're working on that right now with our website, trying to get a dealer list up there. That way, basically, if somebody's in the area, they'd be able to go to that dealer and pick them up from them, which is what we would prefer, is straight from the dealer.
Okay. So where can people check out Zinger Fletching? Where can they, how do they contact you if they want to check some out, if they want to test pack, where can they find all the information and everything about these?
So you could basically go to www.zingerfletches.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Anything else? Anywhere else? No?
A lot of YouTube reviews.
Yeah, you check us out on YouTube. Just search Zinger Fletches, and yeah, there's a lot of great reviews. Very, very in detail reviews.
And it's one of those things where you go into it not knowing what other people are gonna say about your product that you came up with basically in your garage, and it's very rewarding so far, and it's very humbling at the same time. It just feels it's a cool thing to be a part of.
Okay.
And we like to thank Zinger Nation for that, and the guys that are coming back order after order. And it's funny, we get a chuckle every time we see somebody that we know is a common customer, and we just think to ourselves, are they really ordering another 12-pack over and over? And they must be hooking their buddies up. I don't know, but it's just a rewarding thing, and we'd like to thank you guys for that.
Okay. And then I did just have one more question come in, and it's funny when we do these startup spotlights, and it's not just Dave. Last time it was someone else, and there's it's interesting how this pops up. And Dave wants to know, are you seeking investors?
What, somebody to give us money? We're always looking for money.
That's kind of, when we talk about these startups and things like that, I mean, there's a lot of people that are trying to get into the hunting industry, or that, see a product that has, a high ceiling, right? And they say, well, I'd love to be part of that. So, that's the question. The basis there is, are you guys seeking investors?
It's one of those things that we've never even talked about. Like, we basically threw our money together and it's like, hey, let's do this, Yeah. So yeah, we've never really talked about
We basically started this after we found out people took a liking to them. We're like, man, we could go hunt out west maybe. We take an elk trip sometime, and I think we might do something like that next year. But if there's anybody out there that's interested and they have a unique idea, we're just three guys. I mean, we got a teacher, a liquor salesman, and an HVAC guy. And if you want to hang with the Three Stooges, just send us a shout out and let us know what your thoughts are.
Okay. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I love these startup spotlights because we get a chance to, it's the American dream, right? We're all passionate about hunting, and it's just a way that we can, get away from our regular jobs, and everybody has an idea. But it's very refreshing to see guys that take that idea and do something with it, because there's been a million people that invented the nose button but they never move
ran with
forward.
it. Yeah.
And it's always very inspiring to see these types of, success stories, whether it's, you guys are Tethered or, any of these guys that just come together and say, we're going to do this, and they get it done. And so you guys have done a great job at that. You're obviously having fun with it. I like to poke fun at you guys, so it's fun for me too. So, but I appreciate the time, and thanks everybody for stopping by on the Vitals Live this evening, on the startup spotlights. And we'll have another one coming up in a few weeks with latitudes. That one keeps getting pushed back, but we're also going to have who is on next week? I think it's the Ranch Ferry. We'll have Troy back on, and maybe we can ask him about some Zingers and what they do for front of center. So we'll see you back next Tuesday with the Ranch Ferry. But thanks, guys, for stopping by this evening, and we will see you later.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Zinger Nation.
Thank you.